Breaking news. A shocking confession has just turned the world of entertainment upside down. For months, people demanded answers about Yu Menglong's tragic death. Now, in a twist no one could have predicted, a famous actor has stepped forward and confessed to being the real mastermind. This revelation doesn't just close a case. It opens a door into one of the darkest, most chilling stories the industry has ever seen. Here's a rewritten main story section, expanded into a deeper, more emotional narrative in English, approximately 400 words, written as one flowing piece. The courtroom carried a silence so heavy, it seemed to press down on everyone present. When the actor finally spoke, his voice was calm, yet beneath it lay a story of cold calculation and years of torment. What many had believed for months, that the woman accused and her 6 accomplices were the masterminds, collapsed instantly. They were not architects of this crime, but instruments, bent and reshaped by manipulation. The actor confessed that every step they took, every word they spoke, had been guided by his hand. He described his obsession with terrifying clarity. Nothing had been left to chance. He had studied Yu Menglong's habits, his friendships, his vulnerabilities, and he turned this knowledge into a weapon. He orchestrated the setting of the crime like a director staging a cruel performance. The furniture was moved not at random, but to close off escape routes. The lighting was adjusted so that shadows deepened, heightening disorientation. Even the smallest details, the placement of objects, the timing of footsteps, were planned with the precision of someone determined to reduce a human being to despair. What made his confession even more chilling was the motive that drove it. He admitted that his envy had been festering for years. Once they had worked with the same colleague, a woman who admired Yu Menglong but never him. Every smile she directed toward Yu, every recognition Yu received, he twisted into a personal insult. Where others saw talent and kindness, he saw only humiliation and rejection. That humiliation hardened into resentment, and resentment transformed into obsession. By the time he spoke in court, it was clear that the crime was not born from a sudden impulse, but from years of silent hatred nurtured in the dark. The actor confessed that he had not only wanted to end Yu Menglong's life, but to strip away his sense of safety, to crush the dignity that made him admired. He wanted Yu to feel powerless, betrayed, and afraid. The accomplices, manipulated through promises of money and influence, became pawns in a nightmare Yu could never have anticipated. They followed instructions to block every attempt at resistance, ensuring he had no way out. In those final moments, the actor claimed, Yu Menglong realized too late that those he trusted had turned against him. For the audience listening in court, the revelation was devastating, a tragedy not of random violence, but of obsession sharpened into cruelty, executed with deliberate, merciless precision. Do you want me to also write the same section but shorter, around 200 words, for when you need a condensed version for YouTube shorts or teaser clips? When the confession ended, the atmosphere inside the courtroom shifted from shock to devastation. For Yu Menglong's family, the words they had just heard were not simply a revelation, but a wound reopened with unbearable force. His mother sat trembling, her face drained of color, whispering through her tears that her son had trusted people too easily, that he had never imagined betrayal so cruel could come from someone he once respected. Her grief was not just for the life stolen from her son, but for the innocence that was destroyed in his final moments. Around her, relatives struggled to contain their emotions, some shaking their heads in disbelief, others staring blankly as if the truth were too heavy to comprehend. Friends who had known Yu for years, who had celebrated his successes and witnessed his kindness, were equally shattered. They remembered him as a hard-working young man, humble in spite of fame, generous in ways that often went unseen. To learn that his final hours had been orchestrated with such malice left them speechless. It was not only his death that horrified them, but the cruelty with which it had been carried out. a cruelty designed to erase not just his body, but his sense of trust, his dignity, and his peace. Outside the walls of the courtroom, the public reaction mirrored this grief on a massive scale. Online platforms filled instantly with messages of sorrow, disbelief, and rage. Fans who had grown up watching Yu on screen posted heartfelt tributes, sharing stories of how his performances had inspired them through difficult times. Others uploaded videos, voices trembling as they demanded justice, unable to reconcile the image of a beloved star with the brutality of his final days. Hashtags calling for accountability trended across continents, uniting people who had never met, but who now felt bound together by a shared sense of loss. Yet the emotional wave was not only grief and anger, it was also love and remembrance. Across Asia and beyond, fan clubs coordinated vigils, lighting candles, sharing his favorite songs, and creating spaces where communities could mourn together. These acts of solidarity became a way to push back against the cruelty that had taken him, a way to ensure that his final legacy was not defined by the malice of one man, but by the love of millions. In the face of despair, people chose to honor Yu Menglong's life, proving that even in tragedy, compassion could still rise above darkness. Beyond the raw horror of the confession, the case has opened a wider conversation about what envy, power, and unchecked obsession can do to the human soul. What unsettled so many was not only the brutality of the crime, but the careful planning behind it, the reminder that evil can exist not in sudden explosions of rage, but in patient, deliberate calculations made over years. Psychologists who have followed the trial have pointed out that this crime is a chilling example of how jealousy, if left to fester, can distort reality until cruelty becomes a form of self-justification. It is a warning to societies where competition and comparison dominate, where admiration and success can so easily become fuel for bitterness rather than inspiration. For the entertainment industry, the impact has been equally profound. The revelation that a beloved actor could harbor such darkness has forced colleagues, agencies, and audiences to confront the fragile nature of fame. Behind the glamour of red carpets and flashing cameras, there are insecurities, rivalries, and private struggles that rarely make headlines. This tragedy has torn away the curtain, exposing how ambition twisted by resentment can become destructive not only to individuals but to entire communities that once celebrated them. Yet even amid despair, there are signs of resilience and light. Fans around the world, instead of letting grief consume them, have begun to transform their mourning into action. Tributes have expanded beyond vigils and online messages. Charitable campaigns have been launched in Yu Menglong's name, raising funds for mental health awareness and programs that teach young people about the dangers of envy, bullying, and toxic competition. Universities and cultural organizations in several countries have already announced panels and seminars exploring the psychological and social lessons of this case, determined to turn tragedy into education and reflection. On social media, the narrative has also shifted. While initial reactions were driven by anger, many voices now emphasize unity and healing. Fan communities across Asia, Europe, and the Americas are connecting in unprecedented ways, not simply to share grief, but to build lasting networks of support. They remind one another that Yu Menglong's true legacy lies not in the violence that ended his life, but in the inspiration he offered through his work and his kindness. In that sense, his memory has become a rallying point, proof that while obsession can destroy, love and solidarity can rise in defiance of cruelty.